You are standing at the lip of a night that has no calendar. Breathe once. The air tastes of crushed grass and old rock. Under your palm, the soil is cool and fine, like sugar sifted through a thumb. There is no lamp. There is no wall. The dark has weight here, not absence. It presses at your ears. Your breath sounds enormous. You feel your pulse in your throat. The stars are thin pinpricks far above, sharp as the points of memory. You are not safe in a way your mind understands. You are safe in a way your body remembers. Imagine a time where sleep was not a private app on a phone or a medical note in a chart. It was arrangement and negotiation and a living architecture of bodies and fire. The dark meant something to the whole group. Sound meant meaning. The first sleeping places were built by observation and imitation. Nests of woven grass, hollowed drifts of leaves, platforms of bent branches. You learn how to sleep by watching and by copying the small, steady movements of someone older who has made mistakes and learned where the cold leaches in and where the wind makes a knife of a branch. In that world, your breathing is a language someone else reads. You know this by the way you draw your shoulders around your chest. You know it by the way your fingers memorize shape. You know it by the way you count the small sounds in the grass to measure time. Your body does not demand 8 exact hours. It asks for intervals of safety, warmth, and the predictable return of the sun. When elements shift, the shape of sleep shifts too. Those shifts are not just biological. They are social, they are ritual. Now imagine a small bright thing. It flares into being between 2 stones rubbed together, a tiny surprise that changes how your hand feels the night. It smells of resin and green wood, bitter and sweet at once. Heat touches your face like a promise. The circle of light is not just light, it is negotiation. Around a flicker, people move and trade stories, and voices fall into lower pitches. The dark no longer compresses you from every side. It becomes a backdrop for faces. It becomes a shared hearth where sleep is traded for watchfulness and song. The sense of the nighttime world changes all at once and slowly, like the way a heart remembers a new beat. There is evidence. Charred bone and layers of ash in deep sites like wonderwork indicate controlled use of fire very early. In caves, patches of soot and heated stone speak to repeated visits. Ethnographers note that some hunter-gatherer groups still arrange sleep in shifts and circled camps the way people did long before clocks. Modern sleep science suggests that before electric light, the human circadian rhythm allowed segmented sleep and more flexible night patterns. These facts are small planks supporting a larger bridge. They are not the story alone. They are the edges of a map that shows how a light changed our relation to darkness and to each other. If this kind of journey between sensory image and research appeals to you, like this video and tell me where you are watching from in the comments. Say a city or a field and the hour on your clock. It helps build a map of nights the way fires build a map of faces. Breathe. Stay with the dark a moment longer. We will move through the ways humans learn to sleep well without modern technology. We will pass the first nests, sit by the first flames, listen to art scratched on stone, watch beds come from grass and feathers, and follow rituals that made night legible. The promise is not to romanticize, but to observe how a body, a community, and a light interlocked to form what felt like a full and healing sleep. You grow into the scenes with the protagonist of this tale, a woman whose hands know the memory of stones and warm embers. Her name is Anya. Childhood smelled like rain on compacted earth and the balm of crushed mint over a small wound. As a child, she learned to weave a bed of grasses by watching her grandmother, Leela, who used slow fingers to braid the stems into a cradle that held small bodies as if preserving a secret. School for Anya was the night itself. She learned to measure the wind by the way a branch tapped against the roof. She learned to name birds by their sleep calls. The first paragraph of her life is a map of sensations. As she grew older, she apprenticed to a maker of hearths, a man named Moloch, who taught her how to tend embers so they would not flare and die, and so they would not smoke the meat beyond recognition. Moloch would whisper instructions as if they were a prayer, and then slap the cold stone to feel for trapped heat. From him, she learned patience and the science of slow burning. Her hands moved into routines that felt inevitable. Her training hardened into skill, and then into a habit that steadied a whole group. Loss came as it often does in small communities. A night of lightning and too much wind toppled the roof of the common hut. A child was lost to fever, despite a mother named Petra offering bitter teas and the application of cool leaves. In those weeks, Anya learned like comfort and protection are not guarantees. She also learned to be resilient in the small ways that matter to sleep. She learned how to rearrange a bed to catch the most heat. She learned how to coax sleep out of a scared parent by telling a story about a bay of bright stars that will always return. That loss shaped the way she watched the night. It made her careful and generous. In the present of our story, Anya is the person who measures how groups sleep when they have nothing but natural rhythm and the lamp of a controlled fire. She is the one who runs a circle of watchers at dusk and teaches the children how to Google sleep without calling it that because the word did not exist. She is also the one who counts the breaths and teaches the others how to return to a calm breathing pattern. Through Anya, we will see hands, faces, and the protocols that made sleep both possible and restorative before technology remapped the night. The first real scenes of sleep in nature start with observation. You watch a small troop of primates in a study clip that a field researcher left in a notebook. You see bent branches and nesting material woven high in a tree. The sound is dry, leaves rubbing leaves. The smell is sap and the musk of bodies close together. The primates arrange their heads so that any small shift alerts a neighbor. They learn who will wake at the smallest change in wind. The observational model teaches early humans to build nests on the ground and in low branches where predators find it hard to approach unseen. The tactile learning of the first groups relied on imitation. Young ones stroked older fur and learned where to tuck their ears to avoid chafing and where to place their backs to catch heat. Scene dialogue expands the moment into human interaction. Anya speaks to a teen named Thomas while they braid grass mats. Thomas says, "I am tired early these nights." Anya replies, "Breathe with me." Thomas inhales and counts. Anya asks, "What do you hear?" Thomas says, "A fox maybe." Anya nods and says, "That is why we place the pots here, to throw sound off." Thomas laughs softly and says, "You make it all sound like a game." Anya answers, "The night is a set of rules." Thomas says, "Will you teach me?" Anya replies, "Always." The senses here are dense. Visuals of interlaced green grass under a moon that filters through branches. Sound of small insects clicking like distant machine cogs. Smell of dry leaves and sweat, and a faint bitter of roasted root. Tactile memory of a mat that is springy and sharp at the edges. Taste of resin on fingers where someone trimmed twine. These details teach the patience of sleep without devices. They instruct the body to enter stages of rest through routine, warmth, and trust. The arrival of fire is a turning point that changes the economy of night. The first controlled flame is not worshipped as miracle, but handled carefully as technology. The smell of fresh smoke is an alarm and a salve. Heat rearranges how people cluster. Where bodies had been pressed close to maintain thermal equilibrium, a controlled ember lets the group spread and still be warm. It creates a circle where faces are visible and conversations can be quieter. The flame produces a kind of safety that allows deeper sleep cycles to come within reach. It extends the length of the evening, but it also creates a space for lull and for the reduction of ambient threat. We expand the scene with a longer dialogue when the first successful hearth is made. Malik calls to Anya and says, "Hold the dry wood against the red end." Anya answers, "I feel the sting of smoke." Malik says, "Turn your face so your eyes do not water." Anya asks, "How do you keep it small?" Malik explains, "Press the ember under the bark, then cover with small twigs." Anya replies, "It seems fragile." Malik says, "It is fragile, like trust." Anya laughs, a short, bright sound. Malik adds, "Quietly now, we watch." Anya watches the ember glow like an insect caught in amber. Sensory detail multiplies in the hearth scene. You smell warmed resin that smells like citrus under heat, and a faint leather of char. The tongue remembers the taste of roasted tubers dipped in a salt of ash. You hear spit of sap when a log breathes into the flame. You feel the warmth on your shins and the small jumps of heat as embers roll. Your eyes learn to rest on the slow choreography of flame rather than a sharp point of light. Fire creates rhythm for lullabies and for rotating watches. It creates a system by which people can trust one another to close their eyes. There are archaeological notes we weave in to anchor this. Sites with burnt bones and burnt earth show repeated fires in the same places, which suggests repeated controlled use. In certain caves, the pattern of char and hearthstones indicates not accidental burning, but ritualized and controlled fires for comfort and for tool maintenance. These findings, along with ethnographies of modern groups like the San and the Hadza, who construct nightly circles and assign watch duties, give weight to the idea that the coming of fire reorganized sleep. The next passage takes us into cave art and the way night became narrative. Caves are acoustic theaters. The hardest stone swallows sound and returns an echo that turns a whispered story into a chorus. People pressed pigments into hollow bones and spat them into their hands to fling color onto walls. The smell of iron-rich ochre mixes with damp stone. The tactile work of rubbing pigment into porous rock creates a ritual that prepares people for sleep. The art becomes a collective dream language that binds a group to common memory before they close their eyes. The images are not faded decorations. They are mnemonic devices for the night. They mark hunting success and map danger. They also instruct the mind how to travel and dream. In one important scene, you hear Anya instruct a small group who will sleep in a cave corridor. She speaks softly so the echo will not carry. She says, "Let your minds trace the animals we saw today." Seifu, the boy with ink on his hands, asks, "Which one will I dream of?" Anya says, "Whichever you feed with a story." Seifu answers, "I will feed the deer." Anya replies, "Good, feed it kindly." The dialogue is quiet but precise. It has ritual shape. The sensory layout must include smell of damp stone and the mineral tang of pigment, the cooled ash underfoot, the soft thud of breath that has learned cadence from repeated myths, the tick of moisture dripping into a hollow pool, the metallic taste on the tongue when someone licks a finger to smear paint. These images show that imagination and a communal planning of dreams became part of how people entered restful states. Next, we map the evolution of simple beds and mattresses. Nests gave way to layered beds of grass, moss, and feathers. People learned which plants repel insects, which leaves are cooling, which sap dries into a mild antiseptic. They discovered that the right combination of materials could reduce the number of times someone woke to scratch an itch. Anya tests different mixes and keeps a small ledger of combinations in her head. She records that crushed fern plus wool from a domesticated goat makes the bed springy and breathable. She notes that certain aromatic herbs under the pillow make sleep deeper. These practical experiments are a kind of science in the service of rest. In this section, we include a technical and process description of making a layered bed. It reads like instruction for the hands. Gather a base of long dried grasses and compress them into a low mound. Lay a layer of fine moss for insulation. Add a breathable layer of wool or down to create loft. Insert a thin scattering of crushed medicinal herbs that release scent when pressure is applied. Cover with broad leaves to trap warmth and to create a smooth surface. Rotate and replace materials seasonally to avoid mold and to maintain thermal properties. This procedural set of actions explains how small acts of selection compiled into better sleep. We add dialogue in the apprentice style to expand the practical scene. Leela calls to Anya, "Do not pack it too tight." Anya asks, "What if the rain comes?" Leela replies, Then you lift it and let it dry in the sun, and we do not sleep on wet beds. Anya says, I fear the mold. Leela says, that is why we rotate. Anya smiles and says, you teach like a clock. Leela answers, I teach like the sun. Rituals of the night emerge next, and here we explore lunar practices and segmented sleep. In many societies, the moon structured activity. People walked to different rhythms depending on the waxing and waning. There were nights of communal wakefulness and nights of split sleep divided by a long period of quiet. Anthropological records note segmented sleep patterns, where people slept for a while, rose for an hour or two, to tend tasks or converse, and then return to second sleep. During the interlude, communities might sing, repair tools, or keep watch. The darkness was not one long block, but a living weave. To illustrate, we stage an ethnographic moment where a village sits between two sleeping periods. Anya sits with Tomas and an elder named Hara under a crescent moon. Hara says, when the moon is thin, we tend the nets. Tomas asks, and when it is full? Hara replies, then we tell stories and look for patterns in the stars. Anya asks, and the sleep in the middle? Hara says, it holds the work and the dream. Sound in this scene includes the wet clap of nets, the scratch of needles mending hides, the low murmur of a conversation that is not meant to be loud enough to call predators. The smell is bread baking at a low heat. The tactile rhythm is the slow kneading of hands. The narrative now widens to examine communal vigilance and fear. Before secure dwellings, watch systems were necessary. People rotated through night duties to protect infants and to flush predators. Fear and solace were braided. Patrols walked the perimeter and sang low songs to avoid attention but to confirm presence. Naming of characters occurs here to populate the social map. Seifu, the boy who stands watch and hums to mask his fear. Nuno, the elder who knows the sound of a predator that is not a predator. Petra, the mother who presses her child to her chest when thunder comes. Tomas, the apprentice who still counts stars. Malik, the hearthkeeper. Leela, the bedmaker. Hara, the elder who reads the moon. Each of these people performs visible actions across the narrative. We slow the tension in a two-paragraph sensory stretch where a prowling animal comes near. The wind holds. You hear a low step on dry grass. The smell is sharp, animal musk, and the iron of anticipated danger. Anya feels the hairs on her arms lift. Seifu freezes, holding a torch that thins into the night like a match. Nuno presses a hand against the bark of a tree to steady himself. You notice the warm pressure of breath through a throat and the way someone rocks a child to keep them silent. The community exhales only when a distant bark answers and the sounds vanish. This small episode teaches you how close sleep and danger were and how trust was the currency of rest. As agriculture rises, sleep changes its shape. With fields and granaries come fixed schedules. Dawn is for labor, and the night becomes the reserve of a different kind of work. Villages agglomerate into towns and then cities. The story of sleep moves from flexible communal practices to scheduled rest that serves production. Names change. A city dawns a different order, where watchmen have pay and sleep patterns accommodate markets and rituals of labor. The industrial era remapped the body again with factory shifts that demanded bodies on unnatural schedules. Electricity extended waking hours and erased the consistent cue of sunset. Night became optional. We spend a dense and evidence-rich block here. Science now plays a role in our narration. Modern studies show that light suppresses melatonin and delays the onset of sleep. Polysomnography maps show reductions in REM and non-REM cycles in populations exposed to artificial light. In laboratories, participants exposed to blue light from screens take longer to fall asleep and have shallower deep sleep. Epidemiological data associates circadian disruption with metabolic disease and mood disorders. These facts are framed in plain language and woven into human stories to avoid clinical distance. A sentence lists key terms so they sit in your ears as the story continues. REM, melatonin, circadian rhythm, phase shift. Dialogues appear in the urban shift scene. Anya visits a town where a lamplighter named Petra long ago became an occupation turned obsolete. She speaks with a night baker called Tomas who says, "I used to sleep in the day and miss the light." Anya replies, "How do you keep your body calm?" Tomas says, "I learned to darken my room and to treat sleep like a ritual." Anya asks, "Can you truly rest?" Tomas says, "Sometimes." Screen light and the hum of machines pull at the edges of sleep like a moth at a lantern. We pause for a comment call to build community. If this account of how fire and social systems shaped the way we sleep struck a chord, pause with me for a moment and write where you are as you listen. Put your city and the time and, if you like, one short sentence about a night that changed the way you sleep. You do not need a long piece of writing. One line will do. These small notes create a map across the world of how nights are lived now, and they help us tune future videos to the range of sleeping experiences that matter to our viewers. Thank you for sharing that small moment. The discussion moves into the costs of modern light. Sleep becomes a private negotiation where individuals wrestle with devices and schedules. Energy allows industry to run at all hours and creates shift labor that fragments sleep across days. Epidemiologists find that chronic sleep loss correlates with decreased cognitive performance and increased risk for cardiovascular disease. Dream recall alters. In many urban residents, dreams are briefer and less vivid, possibly because REM length is curtailed by light exposure that shifts circadian timing. These changes are not just biological, they are cultural. Our night stories alter when the night is a wall of light rather than a slow gathering of stars. We deliver several moments of tension in this urban and scientific arc. First tension is a night in a factory where a machine malfunctions. The sound is a sudden roar that snaps the rhythm. Workers tumble awake from a shallow sleep, breath scraping like loose paper. The smell is hot oil and ozone. The scene slows as an injured worker named Nuno is led away. This episode is described over 3 paragraphs with sensory detail and the slow pulse of emergency. Second tension occurs when an experiment on sleep restriction produces a participant who begins to hallucinate small moving shadows. The lab lights are bright and white and smell of antiseptic. The participant mutters about shapes crawling on the ceiling. The technicians debate how to proceed. The description is precise and explanatory, with a short technical aside about how sleep deprivation can produce perceptual distortions because the brain begins to misfire in circuits usually reserved for dream. The passage explains the mechanism in accessible terms and then returns to the human detail of a family waiting outside. Third tension is small and intimate. A mother named Petra rocks her child who will not sleep because of the noise of a city bus outside. Her hands are sticky from sweet tea. She hums a tune that used to calm her own mother. The child does not respond. The mother's breath grows tight. She counts backward under her breath. The scene stretches with sensory notes of the bus diesel, the neon through curtains, the weight of the child on her chest. After long minutes, the child exhales and the mother collapses into a quiet, tears hot on her cheek. These tensions emphasize how modern noise and light interfere with core human needs. We return to pre-modern strategies for improving nightly rest without devices. Anya and Leela host a small workshop for a village on calming rituals. They show how to time the last fire so embers linger through the first watch. They teach a breathing pattern: inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. They teach a story ritual where each person adds one line to a slow tale before the second sleep. They demonstrate making a herb sachet to put under a pillow made of lavender and crushed valerian that releases scent when crushed. These are practical, low-tech options that restore cues for sleep. To honor the density rules, we expand the dialogues in the communal workshop. Leela says, "Start with the breath." Anya asks, "Everyone breathe with me." The group inhales. Hara says, "The smell helps me." Sefu says, "My hands want to keep working." Leela replies, "Work will be there tomorrow." Sefu asks, "Really?" Leela answers, "Yes, and the hands will be better if rested." Thomas says, "But I worry about wasting time." Leela retorts, "Time is not wasted when you make the next day better." The exchanges extend and build trust. Now the narrative moves into a long reflective section that ties the ancient to the modern. We list in a lyrical flow the ways people across epochs regulated night through social design. Fire gave light and comfort. Caves shaped dream via echo and pigment. Nests taught young bodies how to curl and trust. Rituals created interludes that held grief and joy and taught the mind how to step into dream. Agriculture brought schedule, and hearths became domestic centers where sleep served economy. Electricity dissolved these boundaries and redistributed sleep into fragments measured by clocks and screens. The protagonist's backstory is revisited in a short reflective montage. Anya sits by a low fire and remembers the child lost to fever. She breathes the ember smoke and remembers Leela teaching her to braid grass. She remembers the first spark she coaxed into life between her fingers, and how hands that know stone can be the ones that steady a whole community. These paragraphs of memory thread the entire narrative with a personal tether. They explain why Anya becomes a teacher of night, and how her life is a small experiment in resisting bright modern night. We now transition to the epilogue, where the narrative will show results in 3 temporal beats. The epilogue must be carried out deliberately with concrete evolution across 1 month, 3 months, and 6 months. Each segment contains named people and visible changes. 1 month later, the village notes small but tangible shifts. Anya has taught a breathing practice and a schedule for dimming the communal hearth an hour before the first watch ends. Tomas reports that his dreams feel longer. Petra writes that her child wakes less. Seifu notes that patrols feel less anxious because the group rotates at predictable intervals. Malik keeps a log of ember sizes so they can maintain slow heat without smoke. The air tastes a little cleaner around sleeping spaces because they have learned to vent smoke away from beds. This period is careful and conservative. The changes are not dramatic, but they are visible and measurable in day-to-day life. 3 months on, the pattern is clearer. The village organizes a slow evening where each household extinguishes extra lamps at a set signal and spends the hour sharing stories. People begin to fall asleep sooner and with fewer interruptions. Those who had trouble sleeping report deeper sleep. The community notices fewer petty conflicts at night. Hara, once a restless elder, remarks that she dreams more often now, and that her dreams have a continuity she lacked. Tomas, whose work is physically demanding, says he feels physically more recovered and has less pain in his shoulders. Anya keeps teaching and records a list of herbal pillows that are now shared among families. The change is social and cultural as much as biological. 6 months later, the experiment widens. Nearby hamlets ask to adopt their protocols. A trader named Nuno starts carrying a simple bag of dried herb mixes so people in market towns can replicate practices. A scientist who visited the area months earlier returns to survey sleep patterns and notes a measurable increase in REM duration among volunteers who followed the low-tech bedtime routine. He writes a report that is careful about cause and effect but notes consistent correlations. The villagers are not free of the encroaching bright lights of the larger world. A new road is planned. But the net result is that many more people in the region sleep with deeper cycles and report more coherent dreams. The project has shifted from local practice to a small movement that respects technology but resists its intrusion into the night. We close by threading the earlier thesis back into the present. The ways humans slept before the age of continuous light were not merely simpler. They were embedded in communal practices that scaffolded the physiology of sleep. The arrival of technology altered the cues and the social architecture that made rest possible. Returning, in small ways, to pre-technology rituals can rebuild cues for healthy sleep without rejecting the benefits of modern life. If this story moved something in you, subscribe to the channel to find more journeys that live between research and sensory memory. Join a community that values careful curiosity and the habit of good stories. Share one small detail about where you are and what time it is in the comments so we can grow our map of nights. Your note matters. The last image you carry is simple: a low ember kept gentle in a ring of stones, people around it breathing in unison, an old woman smoothing grass into a bed, A child drifting into a dream that makes a map of the day for the next morning. Sleep like that is not a quiet failure of will. It is a living practice passed from hand to hand. Sleep well. The night remembers the shape of your body.